Excuse me, officer, could you tell me which gate connects to the Chicago terminal?
A perfectly normal question. Polite, calm. But Officer Craig Brennan looked at the black man in front of him like he'd just touched something dirty.
Back off. Don't come near me. You people always crowd up here smelling like a damn bus station. I'm chewing the meat. Tell me to!
A woman nearby pulled out her phone and started recording. His partner snickered. Nobody said a word to help. Brennan grabbed the man's arm and shoved him sideways. I said move! Before I put you on the ground, you idiot! 30 seconds later, Brennan tackled him face first onto the airport floor. But when they finally opened his wallet, every single person in that uniform stopped breathing. That morning started the way most mornings did in the Foster household. Warren Foster stood in his kitchen at 6:15, pouring black coffee into a ceramic mug his daughter had painted for him years ago. The mug had a crooked smiley face on it. The handle was chipped. He used it every single day. The house was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator and the soft click of the coffee maker cooling down. Sunlight came through the window over the sink and landed on a stack of legal folders sitting on the counter. Thick folders, the kind with red tabs and yellow sticky notes poking out from every edge. Warren was 54 years old, tall, broad shoulders, clean-shaven. He wore a dark navy sweater over a collared shirt, tan slacks, and brown leather shoes that had been polished so many times the toe caps had a mirror shine. Reading glasses hung from a cord around his neck. He looked like a college professor on his day off. Comfortable, unhurried, the kind of man who held doors open for strangers. His wife Denise came down the stairs carrying a small travel bag. She set it by the front door and looked at him with one eyebrow raised. "Warren James Foster, tell me you're not wearing that sweater on the plane." He smiled. "What's wrong with this sweater?" "Nothing. If you're going to a book club..." She walked over and straightened his collar. "You're giving a keynote speech at the biggest legal conference of the year. You could at least wear a blazer." "I'll put on the suit when I get to Chicago." He kissed her forehead. "I'm more comfortable this way." She shook her head but smiled. That was Warren, never flashy, never loud. He'd spent 30 years in the legal system and still packed his own lunch for long flights. Turkey sandwich, green apple, a bottle of water, all tucked neatly into his carry-on next to case briefs and a gavel-shaped paperweight a colleague had given him as a joke. But there was nothing casual about what Warren Foster did for a living. He was a judge on the United States Court of Appeals. His circuit handled some of the most sensitive cases in the federal system: police misconduct, civil rights violations, excessive force claims. His rulings had reshaped department policies in 3 states. His name appeared in law school textbooks. When attorneys filed civil rights cases against law enforcement, Warren Foster was the name they hoped would appear on the bench. None of that was visible this morning. Not in the sweater, not in the quiet kitchen, not in the way he zipped up his carry-on and rolled it toward the door. He was just a man catching a flight. Their car pulled out of the driveway at 7 sharp. Denise was flying on the same route. They had a layover in Atlanta before connecting to Chicago. She had her own ticket, her own seat, a few rows behind his. They liked it that way, a little space on travel days. Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport hit them like a wall of noise the moment they stepped through the automatic doors. It was just past noon. The terminal was packed. Families dragging oversized suitcases, business travelers talking too loud into their phones, the smell of Cinnabon and burnt coffee mixing in the recycled air. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Departure screens flashed rows of cities and gate numbers. Warren moved through the crowd with the same calm he carried everywhere. Carry-on rolling behind him. Boarding pass pulled up on his phone. He split off from Denise at the terminal junction. Her gate was in Concourse B, his in Concourse A. She squeezed his hand once and disappeared into the crowd. He walked toward the TSA pre-check line. Gate A22. 45 minutes until boarding. And that's when he passed a pair of airport police officers leaning against a pillar near the entrance to the concourse. One of them was Officer Craig Brennan. Brennan was 38, buzz cut, thick neck, arms crossed over a chest that stretched his uniform tight. He had a toothpick tucked in the corner of his mouth and a look on his face like he was shopping for trouble. His badge caught the fluorescent light every time he shifted his weight. His partner, Officer Tanya Holloway, stood beside him checking her phone. She barely looked up. Brennan's eyes moved through the crowd like a scanner, passing over white faces, pausing on brown ones, lingering on black ones. His eyes landed on Warren Foster, and he smiled. Warren was 10 steps from the pre-check line when a hand landed on his shoulder. Not a tap, not a polite touch, a grip. 5 fingers pressing into the muscle just above his collarbone. "Hold up." Warren turned slowly. Officer Craig Brennan stood directly behind him, close enough that Warren could smell the spearmint on his breath and the cheap cologne on his collar. "Step out of the line, sir." Warren looked at the hand on his shoulder, then at Brennan's face. "Is there a problem, officer?" "That's what we're going to find out." Brennan's voice was flat, bored almost, like he'd done this 100 times. "You match a description we got on a theft in this terminal. I need you to come with me." Warren didn't move. "What description?" "Black male, medium build, traveling alone." Brennan tilted his head. "That's you, isn't it?" Warren felt the weight of those words settle on his chest. Black male, medium build, traveling alone. That described half the men in this terminal. It described no one and everyone at the same time. "Officer, I'm a federal employee traveling on business. My gate is right there." Warren nodded toward gate A22. "I'm happy to show you my boarding pass." He held up his phone. The boarding pass glowed on the screen. His name was right there in capital letters. Brennan didn't look at it. "I didn't ask for your boarding pass. I asked you to step out of the line." A woman behind Warren pulled her suitcase back a step. A man in a business suit looked the other way. The line kept moving around them like water flowing around a rock, and nobody, not a single person, said a word. Brennan pointed toward the wall on the far side of the corridor, a stretch of blank space between a water fountain and a fire extinguisher, fully visible to everyone walking past. "Over there, now." Warren took a slow breath. Then he walked to the wall. Brennan followed. Holloway trailed behind, one hand resting loosely on her belt. Her eyes moved between Warren and the floor, never settling on either for long. "Empty your pockets." Warren placed his items on the narrow ledge by the water fountain one at a time. Phone, wallet, reading glasses in a leather case, a small notebook with a pen clipped to the cover. Brennan picked up the wallet first, flipped it open, pulled out the credit cards one by one, holding each up to the light like he was checking for counterfeits. Visa, MasterCard, an American Express Platinum card, a library card from the District of Columbia. He turned the wallet over, shook it. Nothing fell out. "That's a lot of plastic for a guy in a sweater." Brennan's mouth curled. "Where'd all this come from?" Warren said nothing. "I asked you a question, and I don't believe I'm required to answer it." Warren's voice was steady. Not loud, not aggressive, just clear. "You've stopped me. You've given me a vague description that could match anyone. I've cooperated. I've emptied my pockets. Now I'd like to know, am I being detained?" Brennan's jaw tightened. The toothpick shifted from one side of his mouth to the other. "You're being questioned in connection with a reported theft." "Then I'd like the name of the person who made the report, the time it was filed, and the specific description that was given." Warren paused. "Because I have a right to know why I've been pulled aside." A teenage girl 10 feet away held her phone at hip level. The camera light was on. She wasn't the only one. An older man near the water fountain had his phone out too, angled low, pretending to text. Brennan noticed. His nostrils flared. "You know what? Let's just make this easy." He pointed at Warren's carry-on bag sitting on the floor. "Open it." "No." The word hung in the air like a struck bell. Brennan blinked. "Excuse me?" "I haven't consented to a search of my belongings." Warren's voice didn't waver. "You have no warrant. You haven't established probable cause. And I've already cooperated with every reasonable request you've made." For a moment, nobody moved. The terminal noise seemed to fade. The rolling suitcases, the flight announcements, the distant laughter from the food court. All of it dropped to a low hum. Brennan stepped forward. He was close now, too close, his chest nearly touching Warren's. "Open the bag." Warren held his gaze. "No." Brennan reached down and grabbed the carry-on by the handle. He yanked the zipper open in one rough motion, the teeth of the zipper grinding like a snarl. Warren's hand moved instinctively toward the bag. "I said I don't consent." "Step back." Brennan shoved his forearm against Warren's chest, pushing him into the wall. Warren's shoulders hit the concrete hard enough to make the fire extinguisher rattle in its bracket. Holloway's eyes went wide. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Brennan pulled items from the bag like a man digging through a trash can. Legal folders, a pressed dress shirt in a dry cleaning bag, the turkey sandwich wrapped in foil. The green apple rolled across the floor and stopped against a stranger's shoe. The stranger kicked it aside without looking. Then Brennan pulled out the gavel-shaped paperweight. Dark wood, polished brass plate on the base. He held it up and squinted at it. "What the hell is this?" "It's a paperweight." Brennan snorted. He turned it over in his hands, then tossed it back into the open bag. It landed on the dress shirt with a dull thud. He rifled through the legal folders next. Didn't read them, didn't even glance at the headers. Just fanned them out, shook them, and dropped them back in a messy pile. Pages bent, corners folded. A yellow sticky note fluttered to the ground. Warren watched his belongings, his work, his preparation for the most important speech of his year, get tossed around like garbage. His jaw tightened. A muscle in his neck pulled taut. But he didn't move. He didn't shout. He just watched. And he remembered. Every face, every detail. The badge number on Brennan's chest. He read it twice to make sure. The time on the departure screen across the corridor. 12:18 p.m. The angle of Holloway's body turned half away, like she was trying to pretend she wasn't there. Brennan zipped the bag shut, halfway. The zipper jammed on a bent folder. He didn't bother fixing it. "Now!" He straightened up and looked at Warren the way a man looks at something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. "Your phone. Unlock it." "No." "Are you refusing again?" "I'm exercising my constitutional rights. Again." Warren's voice was quiet now, almost gentle, like a teacher explaining something to a child who wasn't listening. "The Fourth Amendment protects me from unreasonable search and seizure. You've searched my bag without consent or cause. You will not search my phone." Brennan's face flushed red from the collar up. His ears turned the color of raw meat. Nobody talked to him like this. Not here, not in his terminal. And certainly not a black man in a sweater who should have been grateful Brennan hadn't already put him in cuffs. "You think you're smart?" Brennan leaned in. His breath hit Warren's face. Hot. Sour. "You think throwing around big words is going to help you here?" Warren said nothing. "I've got 3 witnesses." Brennan pointed at Holloway and 2 passing security guards, "who confirm you are non-compliant and verbally hostile. So you can either unlock that phone, or I can call my captain down here and we can do this the hard way." He pulled his radio off his belt and pressed the button. "Captain Doyle, this is Brennan. I've got a non-compliant suspect at Concourse A, requesting backup." The radio crackled. A voice came back. "Copy, on my way." Brennan clipped the radio back to his belt and smiled at Warren. A slow, satisfied smile. The smile of a man who believed, truly believed, that he was in complete control. Warren looked at him. Then he looked down at his belongings scattered inside his half-zipped bag. The bent folders, the wrinkled shirt, the gavel paperweight lying on its side. He said nothing. But somewhere behind those quiet brown eyes, something was already turning. Something that Brennan, with all his badges and radios and bravado, could not have seen coming. Not in 1,000 years. Captain Russell Doyle arrived 4 minutes later. He walked the way men walk when they believe a room belongs to them. Shoulders square, chin up, keys jangling on his belt with every step. He was 58 years old with a gray buzz cut and a face that looked like it had never smiled on purpose. "What do we got?" Brennan stepped forward like a soldier delivering a report. Black male, mid-50s, matched the description on the terminal theft alert. became verbally combative when I attempted a routine stop, refused to comply with a lawful search, got aggressive when I tried to inspect his bag. Warren stood against the wall and listened to every word. Verbally combative. That was a lie. He had not raised his voice once. Refused to comply with a lawful search. There was no lawful basis for the search. Got aggressive. He had not moved a single step toward Brennan. Not one. Warren opened his mouth to speak. "Captain, if I could explain what actually—" Doyle held up one hand without looking at him. "Save it." He didn't even glance in Warren's direction. Not at his face, not at his clothes, not at the scattered belongings in his half-zipped bag. He just looked at Brennan and nodded, the way a man nods when he's already made up his mind. "Did you run him?" "Not yet. He wouldn't give me his phone." "Wouldn't give you his phone." Doyle repeated the words slowly like they tasted bad. He finally turned to Warren. His eyes moved up and down, sweater, slacks, brown shoes, and something shifted in his expression. Not curiosity, dismissal, like he'd already categorized Warren and filed him away. "Sir, my officer asked you a simple question and you chose to make this difficult. That's on you." Doyle crossed his arms. "Now, we can either resolve this right here, or I can have you escorted to the security office. Your choice." Warren kept his voice level. "Captain, I've been stopped without probable cause. My bag was searched without my consent. I've been physically pushed against a wall. I have not been told what crime I'm suspected of. I have not been read my rights, and your officer fabricated a claim that I was aggressive." He paused. "I'd like your full name and badge number, and I'm requesting that all security camera footage from this area be preserved." Doyle stared at him, a long, unblinking stare. Then he laughed, a single dry laugh through his nose. "Camera footage." He looked at Brennan. "He wants camera footage." Brennan grinned. Holloway stared at the floor. "Listen, pal." Doyle stepped closer. "I don't know who you think you are, but around here, when an officer tells you to cooperate, you cooperate. Period. You don't lecture. You don't make demands. And you sure as hell don't start talking about cameras like you're building a case." He jabbed a finger toward Warren's chest, not touching him, just close enough to make the point. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stand right there. You're going to answer my officer's questions, and if everything checks out, you'll make your flight. But if you say one more word about rights or footage or any of that—" Doyle leaned in. "I'll have you in handcuffs before you finish the sentence." The terminal had gone quiet around them. Not truly quiet. Flights were still boarding, shoes were still squeaking on the tile, a baby was crying somewhere near gate A19. But the immediate space had become a bubble of silence. Passengers slowed as they walked past. Eyes turned. Phones appeared. A college-aged kid in a baseball cap had his phone up, recording openly now. No attempt to hide it. A woman in a business suit stood frozen with her rolling bag, watching from 20 feet away. An elderly couple whispered to each other, shaking their heads. Nobody intervened. Nobody stepped forward. Nobody said, "Hey, what's going on here?" Warren stood alone, back to the wall, bag torn open at his feet. 2 officers in front of him and a captain who had already decided he was guilty. That was the moment the air changed. Not because of anything Warren did, but because of what Brennan did next. "Captain, I want to pat him down again. Properly this time." Doyle shrugged. "Go ahead." "I've already been searched," Warren said. "Not by me," Doyle replied. "Arms out, feet apart." Warren looked at the captain, then at Brennan, then at the growing crowd of strangers watching his humiliation like it was a scene from a movie. He raised his arms. Brennan moved in close. This time it was slow, deliberate. He started at Warren's shoulders and worked down, pressing hard into the ribs, squeezing along the waistband, patting down each leg with more force than any procedure required. His hands lingered at Warren's pockets, pushing in deep, fingers digging into the fabric. Warren's jaw clenched. A vein appeared on the side of his neck. His eyes stayed fixed on a point somewhere above Brennan's head, a departure sign that read, "Chicago O'Hare, Gate A22, boarding 12:45 p.m. His flight, 40 minutes away. Another world. Brennan's hand stopped at Warren's inside jacket pocket. He felt something. "What's this?" "My identification." "Take it out." Slowly. Warren lowered his right hand. His fingers moved toward his jacket. Slow. Careful. The way you move when you know that any sudden gesture could be interpreted as a threat. The way black men in America have been taught to move around police since before they were old enough to understand why. His fingertips touched the edge of the leather ID holder inside his pocket. And that's when Brennan exploded. "Gun!" The word ripped through the terminal like a gunshot itself. Passengers screamed. A woman grabbed her child and dropped to the floor. The college kid with the baseball cap stumbled backward, phone still recording. Brennan's arm shot forward. He grabbed Warren by the back of the neck and drove him downward. Warren's knees buckled, his body twisted. The side of his face hit the tile floor with a crack that echoed off the terminal walls. The sound was sharp, wet, like a palm slapping a countertop. Warren's reading glasses flew off the cord and skidded across the floor, spinning in a slow circle before stopping under a row of plastic seats. His notebook fell open, pages fanning out. His phone bounced once and landed screen down 3 feet away. Brennan dropped his full weight onto Warren's back, one knee between the shoulder blades, both hands forcing Warren's arms behind him. The metal handcuffs came out in one practiced motion. Click, click, cold steel biting into Warren's wrists. Warren's cheek pressed against the tile. It was cold, gritty. He could smell the floor cleaner, lemon and ammonia, and something metallic that he realized was his own blood. His lower lip had split open on impact. A thin red line traced from his mouth to the white tile. He didn't resist, didn't scream, didn't curse. He lay there. A 54-year-old man in a cashmere sweater, face down on a dirty airport floor, bleeding, handcuffed, surrounded by strangers who were filming his worst moment but not stopping it. Brennan was breathing hard above him. Adrenaline, sweat on his forehead. His knee pressed deeper into Warren's back. "Don't move! Don't you move!" Holloway stood 3 feet away. Her hand was on her holster, but she hadn't drawn. Her face was white. Her mouth hung open. She looked like someone watching a car accident in slow motion, horrified but frozen. Doyle barked into his radio. "We need security at Concourse A near Gate A22. Suspect is restrained." Suspect. Restrained. The college kid's video was already uploading. Timestamp, 12:31 p.m. A little girl clutching a stuffed elephant stared at Warren from behind her father's leg. Her eyes were wide and wet. She tugged her father's hand and whispered, "Daddy, why is that man on the floor?" Her father pulled her away without answering. And that's when Holloway looked down. The leather ID holder had fallen from Warren's jacket during the tackle. It lay on the tile 2 feet from his head, flipped open by the impact. She saw it out of the corner of her eye, dark leather, gold lettering, an official seal. She bent down and picked it up. Her hands were trembling. She turned it over and read the front. Then she stopped breathing. Holloway's lips moved, but no sound came out. She read the words again, then a third time, like maybe the letters would rearrange themselves into something less terrifying if she stared long enough. They didn't. She turned to Captain Doyle. Her face had gone the color of old paper. She held the ID holder open in front of his face with both hands, the way a person holds something fragile and dangerous at the same time. Doyle squinted. Then his eyes widened. Then every muscle in his face went slack. The gold seal of the United States courts. Below it, in raised black letters, "The Honorable Warren J. Foster, United States Court of Appeals Judge." And below that, his circuit assignment. The Fourth Circuit. Federal civil rights cases, police misconduct, excessive force, unlawful detention. The exact kind of case that was being created on this airport floor right now. Doyle's mouth opened, closed, opened again. He looked like a fish pulled from water and dropped on hot concrete. He grabbed Brennan by the arm, hard, pulled him 2 steps back from Warren's body. "Take the cuffs off!" Brennan was still breathing heavy, still running on adrenaline. His knee was still pressing into Warren's back. "What? Captain, he was resist—" "Take them off right now." "But he reached for—" "Craig." Doyle's voice dropped to something low and raw, a whisper that cut deeper than any shout. "Take the cuffs off that man right now. Do it now." Something in Doyle's tone finally broke through. Brennan looked at his captain's face and saw something he had never seen there before. Fear. Real fear. The kind that turns a man's skin gray. Brennan fumbled for his key. His fingers were shaking so badly it took him 3 tries to find the keyhole. The cuffs clicked open. First the left wrist, then the right. 2 red marks circled Warren's wrists like bracelets made of raw skin. Warren didn't move immediately. He stayed on the floor for a moment. Not because he couldn't get up, but because he was choosing when to rise. On his terms. In his time. Then he pushed himself up, slowly. One hand on the cold tile, then one knee, then both feet. He stood, blood on his lower lip, a bruise already darkening on his left cheekbone. His sweater was torn at the shoulder seam. His collar was twisted. His wrists were red and raw. But his eyes were steady, absolutely steady. The eyes of a man who had spent 3 decades sitting on a bench above courtrooms full of people who had done exactly what these officers had just done. He wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand, looked at it, then looked at Brennan. Brennan had backed up 3 full steps. The color had drained from his face so completely that his lips looked blue under the fluorescent light. The toothpick was gone, fallen somewhere during the tackle. His hands hung at his sides, empty and useless. Warren bent down and picked up his reading glasses from under the plastic seats. One lens was cracked straight down the middle. He folded them carefully and slipped them into his pocket. Then he spoke. Not loudly. He didn't need to. The silence around him was so complete that every syllable carried across the terminal like a stone dropped into still water. "Officer, I need your full name and badge number, both of you." He looked at Brennan, then at Holloway. "Captain, I need yours as well. I want the incident report filed within the hour. And I want every second of security camera footage from this concourse, from the moment I entered this terminal to right now, preserved and logged." He paused, let the words settle. "Because I promise you, every frame will be reviewed." Doyle was already nodding. Fast, jerky nods, like a man agreeing to anything and everything just to make the moment stop. He pulled a notepad from his shirt pocket and started writing with a hand that couldn't hold the pen still. Brennan couldn't move, couldn't speak. He stared at Warren the way a man stares at the edge of a cliff he's just realized he's standing on. The crowd had swelled now, 30, maybe 40 people, some still recording, some whispering. The word passed through the group like a current through water. "He's a judge, a federal judge. He reviews police cases." A man in the back let out a low whistle. A woman covered her mouth with her hand. The college kid in the baseball cap lowered his phone slowly, his face pale. And then, from the far end of the concourse, a woman's voice cut through the silence. "Warren?" Denise Foster was walking fast, almost running. Her travel bag bounced against her hip. She had heard the commotion from Concourse B, saw the crowd, pushed her way through. She saw his face first, the blood, the bruise, the torn sweater. Then she saw the officers. The handcuffs are still dangling from Brennan's belt. The ID holder in Holloway's trembling hand. Her expression moved through 3 stages in under 2 seconds. Confusion, understanding, and then something cold and absolute that made even Doyle take a step backward. She didn't yell, didn't cry. She walked straight to Warren, took his hand, and looked at the 3 officers with the quiet fury of a retired attorney who had just found her first case in years. "Who did this?" Nobody answered her. Denise looked at Brennan, then at Holloway, then at Doyle. Her eyes moved between them the way a prosecutor's eyes move between defendants in a courtroom, measuring, cataloging, deciding who breaks first. "I asked a question. Who put their hands on my husband?" Brennan's mouth moved. Nothing came out. He looked like a man trying to swallow a stone. Doyle stepped forward. His voice cracked on the first word. Ma'am, Mrs. Foster, this was a misunderstanding, a routine stop that escalated beyond what was a routine stop. Denise repeated the words like she was reading them back from a transcript. A routine stop that left a federal judge bleeding on your floor. She turned to Warren, touched the bruise on his cheek with her fingertips, gently. The way you touch something that's been broken and you're checking how deep the damage goes. Are you okay? Warren nodded once. I'm fine. He wasn't fine. They both knew it. But this wasn't the moment for that conversation. Denise turned back to the officers. I want your names, all three, badge numbers, supervisor contact information, and I want to speak with whoever runs security at this airport. Not tomorrow, not after a review, right now. Doyle was already reaching for his radio. His hand shook so badly that he missed the button twice before pressing it. This is Captain Doyle. I need the Director of Airport Security to Concourse A immediately. Gate A22 area. This is urgent. The radio crackled back. Copy. Director Collins en route. Brennan still hadn't moved. He stood rooted to the tile like his boots had fused to the floor. His eyes were locked on the ID holder that Holloway still clutched in her hand. That gold seal, those raised black letters, the words that had turned his career into a countdown. He tried, one last time. Your Honor, Judge Foster, it was just procedure. I thought... Warren turned to him, slowly, and for the first time he let the full weight of who he was settle into his voice. Not anger, not revenge, something heavier than both. Authority. Officer Brennan, the law does not require you to know who I am in order to respect my rights. Each word landed like a gavel strike. The Constitution applies to every person standing in this terminal, not just the ones with titles. What you did to me today, you have done to others who had no ID to save them. The only difference is that today someone was watching who understands exactly what you violated and exactly what it costs. Brennan's lower lip trembled. He blinked fast. His chin dropped to his chest. Holloway was crying, quietly, tears running down her face in two clean lines. She hadn't wiped them away. She just stood there holding the ID holder like it was a verdict she'd been handed and couldn't return. Director Collins arrived within 6 minutes. A tall woman in a dark suit with a security lanyard and a face that said she had already been briefed on the way over. 2 airport authority officials flanked her. She took one look at Warren, the blood, the bruise, the torn sweater, and her jaw tightened. Judge Foster, on behalf of this airport, I am deeply sorry. Then she turned to the officers. It happened fast. Brennan's badge was collected first. Collins held out her hand and he unclipped it from his chest without a word. Then his firearm. He unholstered it with trembling hands and placed it on the ledge beside the water fountain where Warren's wallet had sat 20 minutes earlier. The metal clicked against the marble. He was escorted out of the terminal by 2 of his own colleagues. He walked between them with his head down, past the same passengers who had watched him tackle a man to the ground. Nobody recorded this part. They just watched. Some with satisfaction, some with pity, most with silence. Holloway was placed on administrative leave, effective immediately. She handed over her badge without being asked. Before she turned to leave, she looked at Warren one last time. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, an apology, an explanation, anything. But the words wouldn't come. She closed her mouth and walked away. Doyle was placed under formal review. His radio was taken. His access credentials were suspended pending investigation. He stood perfectly still while Collins delivered the news, staring at a point on the wall behind her head like a man watching his own career evaporate. A paramedic arrived and knelt beside Warren, cleaned the cut on his lip with a cotton swab soaked in antiseptic. The sting made his eye twitch, but he didn't pull away. Denise stood beside him the entire time, one hand on his shoulder, still as stone. Warren pulled out his phone and dialed a number. His clerk answered on the second ring. "It's me. Call the conference organizers. Tell them I'll be late. Something came up in Atlanta." He paused. "And call Judge Henderson. She's going to want to hear about this. The video hit the internet at 12:48 p.m., 17 minutes after Brennan's knee had pressed into Warren Foster's back. The college kid in the baseball cap, his name was Tyler Givens, 21 years old, political science major at Georgia State, uploaded the footage to Twitter with a single caption. "Cop just tackled a black man at ATL Airport. Turns out he's a federal judge. I can't make this up." By 1 o'clock, the video had 200,000 views. By 2 o'clock, it had crossed 1 million. By the time Warren and Denise boarded their rescheduled flight to Chicago at 4:15 that afternoon, the video had been shared across every major platform: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Reddit threads multiplied like cells under a microscope. Screenshots of Brennan's face, mid-tackle, teeth bared, veins bulging, became the image of the day. Then the news trucks arrived. Lorraine Prescott broke the full story on Atlanta's WSB-TV at 6 o'clock that evening. She stood outside Hartsfield-Jackson with the terminal lights glowing behind her and delivered the report that would define the next 2 weeks of national conversation. The headline ran across the bottom of the screen in bold white letters. "Airport officer tackles federal judge. Didn't know he reviews police misconduct cases." By nightfall, every cable news network had picked it up. CNN ran a panel discussion at 9. MSNBC dedicated a full hour. Legal analysts appeared on split screens, dissecting every second of the video frame by frame. Fourth Amendment experts explained, in plain language, exactly how many laws Brennan had broken in under 15 minutes. Unlawful stop without reasonable suspicion, illegal search without consent or probable cause, fabrication of a suspect description, use of excessive force, false claim of a weapon, assault on a civilian. Each violation stacked on top of the last like bricks in a wall that was about to fall on Craig Brennan's head. And then the past caught up with him. Investigative reporters pulled Brennan's personnel file within 48 hours. What they found was not a single incident, it was a pattern. 14 formal complaints of racial profiling filed against Officer Craig Brennan over the previous 5 years. 14. Every single one involving a black or Latino traveler. Every single one dismissed, buried, or marked resolved. No action required. One complaint described Brennan pulling a black businessman out of a first-class lounge and demanding proof he belonged there. Another described him detaining a Latino family of 4 because their luggage looked suspicious. A third described him forcing a young black woman to remove her headscarf for inspection purposes. 14 complaints, 0 consequences, 5 years of silence. Until today. The Department of Justice opened a federal civil rights investigation within 72 hours, not just into Brennan, into the entire airport police department. The investigation would examine hiring practices, training protocols, complaint handling procedures, and the chain of command that allowed 14 red flags to be ignored. Brennan was formally charged the following week. The indictment read like a textbook on police misconduct: assault in the 4th degree, unlawful detention, legal search and seizure, violation of civil rights under Title 18, Section 242 of the United States Code, the federal statute that makes it a crime for anyone acting under the authority of law to willfully deprive a person of their constitutional rights. He was arrested at his apartment on a Tuesday morning. The same hands that had slammed Warren Foster to the floor were placed behind his back while a U.S. Marshal read him his rights. The irony was sharp enough to cut glass. Officer Tanya Holloway cooperated fully with investigators. She provided a sworn statement detailing Brennan's behavior over the 3 years she had been his partner. The stops that targeted black passengers. The descriptions that were invented on the spot. The jokes he made in the patrol car afterward. The way he called it fishing, scanning the crowd for dark faces and finding reasons to pull them aside. She described how she had tried to raise concerns once, early in their partnership. Brennan had laughed. Doyle had told her to focus on her own lane. She never brought it up again. Her testimony became the spine of the prosecution's case. Captain Russell Doyle faced a separate disciplinary proceeding. Internal affairs investigators determined that he had received at least 6 of the 14 complaints against Brennan personally and had signed off on closing every one without investigation. He had enabled, protected, and reinforced a pattern of racial profiling under his command. He was demoted from captain to desk officer, then placed on unpaid leave. 2 weeks later, facing the certainty of termination, he submitted his resignation and accepted early retirement. No ceremony, no pension speech, just a badge returned in a manila envelope and a parking space reassigned by noon. The trial lasted 11 days. The evidence was not complicated. Multiple camera angles from the terminal. Tyler Given's video, now viewed over 40 million times. Witness statements from 19 passengers. Holloway's sworn testimony. Brennan's own fabricated incident report, which listed a theft that never occurred, a suspect description that matched no actual alert, and a use of force justification that contradicted every frame of video evidence. Brennan's defense attorney argued procedural misunderstanding, heightened security environment, split-second decision-making under pressure. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was held on a gray Wednesday morning in a federal courtroom in Atlanta. Warren Foster was not on the bench. He had recused himself. He was the victim, not the judge. But his colleagues on the Fourth Circuit handled the proceedings, and the sentence they delivered carried the full weight of a system that had finally been forced to look in the mirror. Craig Brennan, 36 months in federal prison. Lifetime ban from employment in any law enforcement capacity in the United States. Mandatory restitution. A felony record that would follow him for the rest of his life. When the sentence was read, Brennan sat motionless at the defense table. His attorney put a hand on his shoulder. Brennan didn't react. He just stared at the table in front of him. The same blank stare of a man who had spent his whole career believing that the badge made him untouchable. It didn't. The airport announced a full restructuring of its police department the same week. Mandatory bias training for every officer. Body cameras required on all shifts. An independent civilian oversight board with the authority to review complaints, discipline officers, and publish findings publicly. The 14 buried complaints were reopened, every single one. Warren Foster arrived in Chicago 2 days late. The conference hall was packed. 600 attorneys, law professors, civil rights advocates, and policymakers seated in rows of cushioned chairs under warm overhead lights. The podium stood at the center of the stage. Dark wood, a single microphone, a glass of water catching the light. Warren walked to the podium in a charcoal suit, pressed white shirt, a tie his daughter had given him for his birthday, deep blue with thin silver stripes. His lip had healed, but the bruise on his cheekbone was still visible, a faint purple shadow under the fluorescent stage lights that no amount of makeup could fully hide. He adjusted the microphone. The room fell silent. "I was going to begin this speech with statistics." His voice was calm, measured. The same voice that had delivered rulings from a bench for 3 decades. "I had charts. I had case numbers. I had percentages that would make you uncomfortable." He paused. "Instead, I'm going to tell you what happened to me on Tuesday." For the next 40 minutes, he told them everything. The hand on his shoulder, the vague description, the wallet flipped open like it was evidence, the bag torn apart, the sweater comment, the pat-down, the shout of gun that came from nothing, the crack of his cheekbone against tile, the cold metal on his wrists, the lemon and ammonia smell of the floor, the little girl with the stuffed elephant asking her father why a man was lying on the ground. He told them about the 14 complaints, the 5 years of silence, the system that had every opportunity to stop Craig Brennan and chose, 14 times, to look the other way. He didn't raise his voice, not once. He didn't need to. When he finished, the room was so quiet that the hum of the air conditioning sounded like thunder. Then someone in the 3rd row stood up. Then someone in the 10th row. Then the entire hall. 600 people on their feet. The applause started slow, a few hands, then swelled until it filled every corner of the room like a wave that refused to break. Warren stood at the podium with his hands resting on the wood. He didn't smile, he didn't wave, he just nodded. Once. The nod of a man who understood that the applause wasn't for him. It was for every person who had ever been face down on a cold floor with no title to save them. The speech went viral that evening. 20 million views in the first 24 hours. Clips played on morning shows, late-night programs, and classroom projectors in law schools across the country. Legal scholars called it the most important address on police accountability in a generation. That night, Warren and Denise walked together along the Chicago River. The city lights reflected off the dark water in long, golden streaks. The April wind was cold, but neither of them hurried. She held his hand. He held hers. They didn't talk about the airport. They didn't talk about Brennan or Doyle or the trial. They talked about their daughter's graduation next month, about the tomato plants Warren wanted to put in the backyard, about whether they should get a dog. Normal things, quiet things, the things that matter most when the noise finally stops. 6 months later, Warren Foster ruled on 3 landmark police accountability cases from his bench on the Fourth Circuit. Each decision strengthened protections against unlawful stops, expanded the scope of civil rights enforcement, and set precedents that would be cited in courtrooms for decades. Craig Brennan began serving his 36-month sentence at a federal corrections facility in South Carolina. He filed no appeal. Tanya Holloway resigned from the police force. She took a position with a nonprofit organization that advocates for police reform and trains officers on de-escalation and implicit bias. She speaks at community forums. She tells her story. She never hides from what she failed to do that day. The airport's Civilian Oversight Board published its first annual report 8 months after the incident. Complaints against officers dropped by 61%. Use of force incidents dropped by 44%. Every one of the 14 reopened cases resulted in formal findings of misconduct. And Tyler Givens, the college kid with the baseball cap and the phone, graduated summa cum laude from Georgia State that spring. He's in law school now, first year, constitutional law focus. He keeps a screenshot of his original tweet pinned to the corkboard above his desk. It has 93 million views.
Brennan got 36 months, 14 complaints reopened, and Warren stood before 600 lawyers and told them what that airport floor smelled like. But Warren said one thing in that speech that I haven't been able to shake. He said, what you did to me today, you have done to others who had no idea to save them, and that broke something in me. Because I realized we only heard this story because Brandon picked the wrong person. If Warren was just a man in a sweater, no title, no courtroom, no power, he would still be a name on a buried complaint, number 15, and Brandon would still be out there fishing. That's what keeps me up. Not the one story we heard, it's 14 we almost didn't. And I think that's the question we all need to sit with. Do we only care about justice when the victim turns out to be powerful? Or do we care even when there's no twist at the end? Be honest with me. Tell me in the comments. If this hit you, like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell. We tell these stories every week. Justice shouldn't depend on what's in your wallet. Remember that.